Everybody, if I can have your attention again, we'll get started here. As I mentioned, I wanted to just provide a very brief overview, maybe no more than 5 minutes on Lumen Institute, and we'll ask Cardinal DiNardo to come up and for the main event. But so I guess really the best way to explain Lumen, I always start with the mission statement: to form Christian leaders illuminating society with the light of Christ. And so it's formation, and then it's putting that formation into action. And the way I've been starting to talk about Lumen a little bit as a journey, because that's really what it is. So at the top of that, it starts with, I think where a lot of us started as we came into Lumen, sort of an invitation to better integrate our faith and our leadership. So we sort of get to a point in life where we no longer compartmentalize our work and our faith, and we start to say, hey, that's really who I am, it's how I make decisions, and we bring those together. Father Nathaniel pointed you out to the core value card. We said the prayer on the back. But Lumen, these are woven into kind of the fabric of Lumen, these core values. And that's really kind of where it starts, is integrating these core values into our decision making. And the first step really is becoming a more virtuous decision maker, right, in business. We move over to highly personalized spiritual formation. And this is just the greatest gift you might ever receive. Of all the areas in life that you're going to invest time and effort in, to have the spiritual coaching, spiritual director. We're supported by the Legionaries of Christ, and it's just an amazing gift. And I will tell you that also we're fortunate in Houston, there's a consecrated women community, so that is also available to the wives, and it really enriches the family. So of all the offerings in Lumen, and there are a lot, but this is really, as we like to say, the steak on the plate. This is really what makes Lumen so special and so unique. But it goes beyond that into the group. So we have 16 chapters through the U.S., Canada, launching a few in Mexico as we speak. We have 2 chapters in Houston, one in the Woodlands, one in Houston, each of them with 20 plus members. And this is where the iron sharpens iron. And very briefly, like the 3 big components of those meetings are, those core values. So there's a core value reflection and some conversation on that, a gospel reflection and some very rich discussion around that, and then a business case. And ideally, we're taking something that a member is processing and bringing that in, or we do default. There's always a good business case that is written up and something from a business lens. But again, back to how do we become more virtuous in our decision making as business and cultural leaders. And we move over to the Lumen Action. And this really speaks to that second part of the value proposition, illuminating society with the light of Christ. So it just sort of follows that, with that formation that was sort of called into action. And there's 3 levels to that. The first is at a very personal level. So we talk about the business, but you don't just leave it at the office. So ideally, it makes you a better spouse, a better father, a better wife, a better parent, and a better witness to Christ around your friends and family. So a lot on the personal level. Secondly, at a chapter level, there are a lot of Lumen actions, a lot of work with underprivileged and throughout the community. Also a lot of work with mentorship. We have a Lumen's Fellow program for those 25 to 35 younger businessmen. We support YCP, Young Catholic Professionals. So mentorship, because it's a leadership organization, is also a big part of our Lumen action. And then finally, the bigger ones that we do on a large scale, and the best example I can give is we have a member in Connecticut who is actually bringing the production of Bernadette de Lourdes from France to the U.S., which will tour the U.S. starting probably late next year and into 2026. So it's a very large scale project there. And then the last one is the national network. So I think everybody in this room can appreciate the value of a network. And I would say just having a national network of good Catholic businessmen is a very powerful network and a very, very valued network. But beyond that, all the legionnaires and consecrated women that support us throughout the U.S., Canada, Mexico, it's a beautiful community and will absolutely enrich your life in many, many ways. So again, I don't want to take up too much time, but we have probably 40-some Lumen members in the room. Those are the guys with the pins on there, but if I can ask Lumen members if you just raise your hand so they can sort of see who you are. Thank you. And a very good chance you were invited by a Lumen member, but if you have any questions, please follow up with them. And I think Father Nathaniel mentioned we're going to have some follow-up lunches in the next couple of weeks with all of that. So, and also some literature that we left there. So you have the core value card, and then some ideas on some of the other things that we do as a community. So with that, brings us to an introduction for Cardinal DiNardo, and I think you all got to read the long bio. I'll just give you the short version here. His Eminence Daniel Cardinal DiNardo is the Metropolitan Archbishop of Galveston, Houston, pastor to its 2 million plus Catholics, 435 priests, and 146 parishes, and 54 schools spread over 8,800 square miles. The seats are St. Mary Cathedral Basilica in Galveston and the Co-Cathedral of the Sacred Heart in Houston. Please give a warm welcome to Cardinal.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Please eat. I can't stand when people have food in front of them and they're not eating. So keep eating. Don't worry. I can be heard, I assure you. And this was a talk they told me when they called me that was something on leadership. I could say, looking back on being a leader. Because my leadership is almost over, as some of you may well know. On Monday of this week, the Holy Father accepted my retirement from the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston, and at the same time appointed a new Archbishop, Joe Vasquez, who is currently the Bishop of Austin, Texas. Up till 15 years ago, he was my auxiliary. So naturally, I'm kind of happy that he's coming back, since he did some of his auxiliary work here in Galveston, Houston. And though he is from West Texas, from the Diocese of San Angelo, he's worked in Eastern Texas for some years. So now, when you turn 75, the canon law says you must submit your resignation to the Holy Father. Okay? Some people have asked me that. No, that's what you must do. So I did it on May 23rd of last year. And a month later, I got a letter back from Rome that said, we accept your resignation, nunc pro tunc. Leave it to the Latinists in the Rome to say that. Nunc means now, pro tunc means for then. So that means we accept it, but we're not going to announce it until we find your successor. So that was their solution. And now 8 months later or so, 7 months later, they have a solution. So that's why I was retired. People have asked me, are you happy to retire? And I mentioned at the news conference the other day, I'm happy to see retired and see the diocese moving into good hands on one hand, and on the other hand, I'm ecstatic about leaving. So you who are leaders, and all of you who are leaders, because you're business leaders, whether men or women, and you know that once you're a leader, wherever it may be, there's a certain element of responsibility. That's both beautiful and a weight. And I've carried a weight of responsibility for like 28 years now as a bishop, first in the Diocese of Sioux City, Iowa, and then here in Houston, beginning in 2004. Well, I was named a bishop to Sioux City, Iowa, and I must admit, well, thank you very much. I must admit that when I got to Iowa, I felt like I was in Kansas, just miles and miles of cornfields and soybeans and the raising of hogs. It was a highly agricultural diocese, 16,000 or so square miles. And but I learned to adjust. I'm from Pittsburgh originally, and I learned to adjust. By the way, I'm from Pittsburgh. There was snow here the other day. It lasted 20 hours and it's gone. In Pittsburgh, it gets snow and it lasts for 5 months, right? That's the way the difference. In any case, I went to Iowa and loved it, and in 2004, I got a call from the nuncio, the Pope's representative of the United States, who said, the Archbishop, or the Bishop then of Galveston, Houston, is reaching close to retirement age in a year or two, and he wants some help, and so the Holy Father thought of you. And so guess what? You've just been named coadjutor Bishop of Galveston, Houston in Texas. My comment to the nuncio was, I've never been in Texas in my entire life. He said, you will love it, and hung up the phone. And I have loved it. Texas is a beautiful place. And the Catholic Church in Houston is particularly beautiful. And one reason why it's so beautiful is that every culture, language, and nation is represented here. Truly, the Catholic Church in Houston is the United Nations. And all you have to do is go to one of your parishes. Some people have said that in part of the problem with Christianity, it's the most segregated thing on Sunday, that people are only with their own race and culture and all. And I say, well, that's not true in Houston. I say Mass every Sunday in various places. And when you walk in and see the faces, they are every language, race, and nation in our churches. We should be delighted that we have that. We should also be delighted that the new Archbishop is absolutely bicultural and bilingual, English and Spanish, because 51% of our population is of some Hispanic extraction, right? There are various Hispanic communities here, and most of them love each other, but occasionally when you put them together in one parish, they don't always love each other. So it requires great dexterity for our priests to be able to deal with this great variety of Catholic Christian community. I was asked to give a little talk on leadership, and at the end of being a leader, at least as the Archbishop of the Archdiocese, as of March 25th, Joe Vasquez will be seated in the chair in Sacred Heart Cathedral here in Houston by me and by the nuncio. And that's all it is, because he's already a bishop. So we're just going to take him and sit him in the chair, and the moment he sits in the chair, all the headaches are his, and all the headaches for me are gone. That's what it means, right? He's in charge of the whole blessed thing. And because he's so good in Spanish and as English and Italian also, it's wonderful to have a bishop like him take over. He's intelligent, he's practical, he has prudence. I was looking at your leadership qualities. I said, oh, good. That sounds like Bishop Vasquez. He'd make a good Lumen member, but he's also very good as the new Archbishop of Galveston, Houston. I will maintain the work I do as a cardinal, right? That's somewhat separate. So you have to go to Rome occasionally for meetings or something, and I maintain all of that until I'm 80. When you're 80 years old, you can no longer, as a cardinal, vote in the conclave that elects a pope, okay? Up until then, I can do it. So I hope I don't have to go back to a conclave, but I've already been to one. But that's the way it works. Once you turn 80, Rome says you're still a cardinal, but you're no longer eligible for voting for a conclave with the Pope. So that'll answer some of your questions that you might have. Now, I want to say a few words on leadership. The most important thing I can figure for a leader, whether in business or indeed in the faith, which I've been involved in for 47 or so years as a priest, is presence. Presence is the first requirement of a leader. What do I mean by that? Presence means that you're on site and you're with the people over whom you're leading or governing. Take, for example, some people say the first thing you go in when you become Archbishop of a diocese, you should give them your vision. My thought always was, well, I think the first thing I should do is go visit with my priests and people and go to various parishes and look around and not just talk, but also listen to them. Because if you listen to them, you'll find out things that aren't in the booklet they might give you when you come about. We all know that it's very multicultural. Okay. Now, what does that mean? Well, why don't you go to the parishes and find out? And so, to my mind, whether you're in some business or in education, or particularly in the church, the first thing you've got to do once you're named, appointed, or elected, one of the others as leaders, they say we're named, we're appointed as bishops, but Rome uses the expression, you are elected bishop. Well, who are you elected by? The Holy Father, right? He's the one that has named you, has elected you to go to the various dioceses you go to. And I think presence represents an extremely important aspect of any kind of leader. It assumes and presumes, I have to speak about my own experience, a pretty decent faith, personal faith, on your part. And I would say that of a leader, if you're Catholic or not, there needs to be a faith. In other words, that there's something greater and bigger and transcendent and loving, and so we understand who God is, that you have to be in contact with. Now, in my Catholic faith, there's only one way to be truly in contact with the Lord, and that's by prayer. So you spend some time in conversation with the Lord, or on the days when you shouldn't be so conversational, you spend time in listening. When you do that, that makes you a good listener and talker with your congregations, or with your parish, or your diocese, or your business. So you both listen and talk. That's presence. And you do it frequently and often. When I first got here, when you get to the end of your life as a leader, you're not supposed to look back and pat yourself on the back. But one thing I did pretty well when I came here for my job as bishop was to visit the parishes often. Now, we have a particular excuse to do that in Galveston, Houston. We do 150 confirmations almost every year. So you're running around the diocese every week, and it's really good. So you're in a parish, and you're meeting people, and you know who you're especially meeting? Young people. I would say either you're a business leader, whatever you do. Meeting and engaging with young people is an extremely important part of presence, which is an extremely important part of leadership. Does that make sense? Presence. It's really important, and being with young people. No one was better at this than St. John Paul II, who happened to be the Pope who named me a bishop. I still remember a year later, I went to Rome for every 5 years, the bishops are supposed to go to Rome to report on their diocese. It's a very complicated thing. But in any case, we'll leave that aside. But I was first year bishop, and I was to go to Rome with the bishops from Nebraska and Iowa, etc. And so Pope John Paul II met with every bishop. No one since him has done that. But he considered it part of his presence that he would meet with you as a bishop of a diocese. Well, I'm scared to death, as you can imagine. You walk into his office, this big, huge Renaissance thing, the walls high. And he's sitting there at a desk when I walked into him. Remember, I'm a first-year bishop. And he's sitting over the desk like this. I'm wondering what he's doing. He's trying to find Sioux City, Iowa on the map. It's wonderful. And he looked up at me and he said, "Ooh, very rural." I said, "Yes, Holy Father, it's very rural." You know what the first question he asked me? "What are you doing for the young people?" This is his first question. And you know everything about John Paul II. What was it that motivated him and moved him? Young people. And no matter where he was, it was the young people, even when he was, 84, 85 years old, who were attracted to his style of leadership, because his sense of presence about things was, you're always interested in the young people. Friends, if I could tell you anything in the years of episcopacy I've had in priesthood, you've got to know, understand, if you can, and sometimes they're inscrutable, I'd be the first to admit this, but you have to be close to the young people, because they're important. They're actually looking to you, though that they may be confrontational occasionally, or they may ask questions that are uncomfortable, but that's really important. It's an important part of presence for any leader, and that's the first thing, presence. Now, the second thing I say for leadership is consultation. And I divide consultation into formal and informal. Gathering together with presence. Informal consultation is you're willing to speak to those who you're leading. And that means you can ask them questions or let them talk to you. I find the informal consultations great, particularly with my priests. When I first came here, I knew 2 priests in the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston, and there's a lot of priests in the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston. You know, between the religious and diocesan, we probably have close to 400. In any case, so you spend time just talking with them. I've set up this whole thing about having a dinner every other month or so with 4 or 5 priests in my house, and you were not allowed to discuss business. All you discussed was talking with each other. That's how I got informal consultation. In addition, it's very important that you have formal consultations. I have an Archdiocesan Pastoral Council and a Priest Council. Priest Council is extremely important. We meet every other month. We deal with an agenda with different topics, and I hear their formal consultation. I also have an Archdiocesan Pastoral Council, which is a mixture of religious and laity and 1 or 2 priests, and I listen to them when we have an agenda. I consider formal consultation very important because that helps you when you're trying to get together and doing the third thing. It's important in a leader. You have to make decisions. At a certain point, after all the consultation is done, and it's really important that you do that. It shouldn't be a functional consultation. Yeah, I do it, but you don't listen. But after you've done all the listening and asking and trading off questions and answers, then at a certain point, there are certain things you have to make a decision on. And there's nothing worse than a leader who won't make decisions. You have to do it. And I must say this, once you make the decisions, since I know a lot of people can do that, even bishops, but then you have to follow through. And that's the tricky part. Maybe as a leader, you've discovered that too. How do you follow through on your decisions? And I found those 2, that's why I say decisions and follow through, they go together. May I add, while I'm talking about decisions at this point, there are some leaders who are really good, but they're what I call micromanagers. That they're so distinctive about their responsibility that they have to be involved in everything in a rather overly personalist way. I know some bishops who are like that. They end up in 2 things. They drive themselves crazy, and they drive all those who work with them crazy. You may know such people. You need to occasionally interfere or intervene into something, but to do this constantly without having enough respect for those who work with you, who collaborate with you, that you let them do their thing. There are times when I appoint a pastor, I expect him to run the parish. I don't do that. There are certain things that the priest does I don't like. They're not such as that there's anything against law or anything. So I might not like it, but you have to let that happen. If you don't let it happen sometimes, you'll never get a great variety in your parishes, and that's beautiful. So it's the same thing with leaders anywhere. There are certain things you have to do, and you need follow through. But if you're a micromanager, you'll probably give yourself a nervous breakdown. Or if you won't have one, everybody around you will have one. So it's probably wiser to have a balance when you're dealing with the decisions. So presence, consultation, decision making, and carry through. Sounds very simple. I think it's not so simple, but you can't leave out in all of this, and that's why I don't make it as one of the numbers, but something that is a thread that goes through it all, is a sense of humor about things. If you do not have a sense of humor, then the messed up given days that we all have will overpower you. But with a good sense of humor and a trust in God, you will not be overpowered. You will take it through. This is something that happened. It's not a great day. You have to be critical enough to say, I must have done something wrong, or maybe I just was incomplete or inarticulate, or maybe the staff around me wasn't as good as they should have been, but whatever. If you get overly rambunctious about those things without a sense of humor, they'll take you down. I have found in my years of being a bishop of a diocese, you really want to make sure once you're in there 4 or 5 months that you have a great team around you. If I can say it this way, pick people who are more intelligent than you are. they will make you look good. That's the whole point. If you pick somebody because, well, I'm afraid what they might do, they may be more greater, or they have more abilities in some things. So what? You're the leader. If you look good because others around you are doing really well and they're intelligent, I think that's great. Not everybody buys that kind of sense of leadership, but I think it has worked for me a great deal. I might add that we have some very great collaborators that I have in the Chancery Office of the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston, and they're good, excellent. And one of them is our Chief Financial Officer. She's very good. And by the way, she's not afraid to tell me things, even things I don't want to hear. That's good. If you don't have somebody who will tell you even what you don't want to hear, then you'll never grow up, and the organization, as it were, will never grow up and do well. So, friends, as you can see, these may sound like they're everyday things in management or in action. Okay, well then that's all I have. But it's what I do give you, and it's after 48 years of being a priest and 28 years or something like that of being a bishop. It's been a beautiful time to be in God's church. It's a very difficult time. The problems are very, very intense. But it's a beautiful time because you actually can make a difference. If that's true with me, it's true with you. Some people come to me and they write letters. I do get letters, and not all of them are praiseworthy. And they tell me what's wrong, and I want to tell them that you've raised some really good issues here. What have you done to go to your pastor and tell them this? You know, might tell me. Tell your pastor and see if you can work it out it's like Moses, work it out at the lower levels. Only refer the hardest cases to me, the bishop. Things should happen in parishes because if you have something to ask, you should go ahead and say it. Say, well, the pastor may not like me. Hey, so what? He's at least has heard that somebody is telling him something of concern. So my years as a bishop and priest have been beautiful, I must say. People have been wonderful and magnificent. Even those who criticize have been very good. I have greatly loved the priests I've worked with. So for me, being a leader in the church was beautiful. I hope being a leader in your businesses will end up being equally beautiful because there were both ups and downs. And you did it because you have, as I said at the beginning, fundamental faith in God to lead you well. Thank you, brothers and sisters. Thanks.